Hello everybody, and welcome to another video. My name is Rodgon, and today we're going to be doing things a little bit different than we normally do. Yesterday, I went ahead and recorded an illustration that took me about 3 hours to complete, and since not everybody wants to sit here and watch a video that's 3 hours long with me just humming and going through half the time, I sped it up a little bit. So it's about 20 minutes long now, and I'm going to be trying to talk over it and trying to explain to you guys what my thought process was while I was going about doing the illustration. It's a full color illustration, and it's done in Manga Studio, but the way that I approach it can be approached in any design software that you have at your disposal. One more thing though. I finally launched my Patreon. It's honestly just a way for all of you that already support me to, come get some extra content if you guys are enjoying what I do. I will be going a little bit more in depth with the description in the videos within, just for my Patreons, the people that will support me. And I have very cheap tiers. I think you get like everything that I could possibly do for like $2. You get access to all the videos, voting for every poll, so you guys can choose what I do. And anyways, just check it out if you guys are interested. I will not stop uploading YouTube videos. I like this community way too much to be just giving up on it, which is not going to be the case. Don't worry. Do not worry about that. All the videos are going to stay consistently the same. I'm just going to add this so I can stop doing freelance so much and be able to actually focus on creating content for you guys. But let's leave that aside and let's get to the video, shall we? Okay, so first things first. Whenever I do an illustration, I try to first approach it with just a drawing from memory. I use all the practice that I do with my sketches in my sketchbook and everything to be able to get to the point where I don't need reference. And that's the ideal point. Using a reference image is always nice, but being able to draw things without having that reference is the ideal aspect of my journey as an illustrator. Right here, I'm just setting, a basic shapes of a woman. As you can see, it looks very much so like one of those mannequins that you can just buy and set up. I learned in my own special way that doing things like that kind of worked. I modify the shapes in order to make them fit a little bit more into how I draw and how things make sense to me. But you can see that the female, at least, is drawn in a very, 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 very basic shape way. Obviously, I've drawn Archie like a trillion times. And if you don't know who Archie is, it's that little half raccoon, half red panda character that you might see in some of my illustrations. He was named after one of you guys, one of my fans, beautiful girl by the name of Carla Newton that lives in a very faraway land. I think it's Scotland. Is it Scotland? I believe it's Scotland because she has a really, really cute accent. But I just put a post up and she named it. So yeah, most of the time I have everybody in my fans, they kind of name my stuff. Okay, a little bit more into the actual design. At this point, you can see me refining the face of the girl, and I wanted to have like a little quirky look to her. So I was going to give her a little cat beanie and kind of make her into like a cat burglar / superhero. I gave her the little mask. I start refining the neck a little bit more because I think that it's just too stiff. And at this point, I see that it's a little bit, like the head was a little bit smaller than the head was supposed to be. And I have that issue a lot of the times because I was a caricature artist and I tend to draw either heads too big or heads too small. So having a design program like this is wonderful. And this could be any design program, really. the way that I design things can be done in anything. I normally just use the basic pen, and this is Manga Studio because I like Manga Studio. I just find the program really, 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 really nice, simple, aesthetically pleasing, and it's really cheap. So, I have a whole rant about Manga Studio and Photoshop and stuff like that in other videos. So I'm not going to disturb you with this. At this point, I'm just trying to clean up the design a little bit, making sure that the lines look a little bit streamlined, adding a little bit of overlapping shapes so you can see a little bit more of an indication of the anatomy underneath it. If you can see in the knees, those little tiny indications of where the bones is make a world of difference. Trying to break down the shapes of the actual shoes and the other parts of the design that aren't clean enough as a sketch for me to be able to clean up later. So as you can see, I just start adding very, very rough details of everything. I think at this point I didn't like the way that the eyes looked. They weren't looking in the direction that I wanted. So I went ahead and just cleaned it up. I had some issues being happy with the way that the mouth looked. And if you can see, I'm trying out a bunch of different new ways to draw mouths from some, sketches that I had in my sketchbook, from reference, from models and stuff like that. So at this point, I'm just trying different, facial expressions, different faces, different mouths, different sizes, just to see if I can get a slightly better look to her. I wanted her to have like one of those like slightly overbite lips. I incredibly am a big fan of just like pouty lips. So I like drawing my girls like that. Then I went into trying to refine the hand a little bit more, just to clean it up, just so I can, whenever I use this, quick sketch as a template, I don't have any questions and I don't have to, double guess myself whenever I try to just ink lines. The inking process for me, it's really tedious because I hate inking. I hate inking. It just takes way too long for my own likes, and I just absolutely hate it. It's necessary, but I hate it. Because I've never been incredibly good or like just naturally talented at that. I made the arm a little bit smaller since it looked like it wasn't aesthetically pleasing. At this point, I start cleaning up Archie a little bit, making sure that all the overlapping shapes have a little bit of depth. Having the indication of the fur, I make them a little bit, tiny bit smaller. And then I start refining the cape. I was trying to make sure that it looked like the cape was flowing, but at the same time that the girl was kind of pinching his, just pinching it so he wouldn't go chasing after the guy that yelled boobs. I make a really quick indication of a background cityscape that I'm going to just be doing with shapes. I gave her a cape and just a very, 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 very small indication of what shadows are going to be in the design. I then went ahead and made the design a little bit more opaque. I turn it down to like 20% opacity and then I start inking. I ink with the exact same brush. In this case, it's the G Pen in Manga Studio, and I use the vector tools, like a vector layer. The reason that I like the vector layer is because it allows you to autocorrect your line work a little bit, so it's nice and smooth. And if you can see, whenever there's an overlapping little line, I can just go in and erase it. That's a nice little nifty tool that Manga Studio allows. I'm not used to talking this much so quick. Right now I'm just adding little details, making sure that my thick to thin lines make sense. It's not a matter of just throwing them out there. You got to make sure that they play a role in your design. And what I mean by thick to thin is, if you can tell, every single time that the line work is where a shadow would hit, it's a little bit thicker. And it's a little bit lighter at the top section whenever the light would not hit. And I do this obviously on purpose to create a sense of light, a sense of a light source that you wouldn't even notice if I didn't put any shadows in there. You'd still be able to realize that there's a little bit of a light source. So I go in, I start designing the eyes, the mouth, and just cleaning up everything and tightening up the design based on the sketch that I had below. I believe the eye was a little too small, so I went in and just made it a little bit bigger. So it's not set in stone whenever you have your template. You always have to make sure that you go in and refine it as necessary. Little tiny details that I forgot to add in the sketch were, where the hair was going to be flowing afterwards, little indications of stress underneath the eyes, even though you don't want too much of that. Especially, in an illustration that involves a pinup, you want to have like aesthetically pleasing, features. And if you can tell right now with the legs, it's taking a long time for me to get to the point where I can draw legs nicely. I used to always draw them super stiff, and it's because of the subtleties that come along with the leg muscles. It's a pain in the ass learning all those little tiny nuances. They're not just cylinders. It's very easy to just break it down into just 2 cylinders, but it's a lot more than that. I'm going to have to make a whole entire video talking about that. I wanted to make the drawing a little bit sexier, so I was going to make like a little hole in her shirt to show her cleavage. I think I decided to take it out later because it just didn't match up well with the design. If you can see, overlapping shapes are a big part of how you get designs to look a little bit more in depth. The hand is literally all overlapping shapes. That's just how you make your designs pop. At least designs that, look like mine. Go into the foot a little bit more. Once again, it's not just a simple shape. You have to make sure that little tiny nuances, like those little lines that I'm adding, they add a little bit of depth to the design. It allows you to see where the planes are, and it just gives it a lot more depth. Depth is the name of the game. If you want to progress in your designs, making just any design pop and make sure that it actually looks anatomically correct and, not just flat, it takes a lot of overlapping shapes. And I think that's more so a design element from animation, because you need to simplify things really easily without having too much detail or lights or shading. So yeah, take into consideration. Right now I'm drawing Archie's arms and body, and it's literally all super simple overlapping shapes that allow me to provide the feeling that he's jumping and he's moving forward in the page. The vector tool is amazing. I'm going to have to make a whole video of how to ink with that. I just discovered it maybe a couple months ago, and it's honestly, I'm never going back to Photoshop for inking. Never. It just beats it. Let's see. What else am I doing here? Essentially, at this point, I'm just adding little tiny details as I go and making sure that I refine the lines to make sure that it looks nice and clean. This is probably the part that takes the absolute longest for me. If this was Adobe Illustrator, it would be incredibly faster, but unfortunately, I'm trying to, well, not unfortunately, fortunately, I'm trying to push myself to learn how to do the same process in different programs, because, that's just how you get better. I decided to make her eyes a little bit darker. I don't know, I haven't found a compelling way to draw light colored eyes. And then drawing the building that she's sitting in, making sure that it makes sense. It's not just the ledge, but it's going into the perspective. So I have to make sure that I added a little bit of detail. Adding some cast shadows. in making sure that, I create a light source without having added any light source yet. So at this point, I know that it's going to be a global light source because it's just creating a light from the top. I go in and add little details to the beanie. And I believe at this point, I start coloring. I went in and I decided to go... I'm horrible with colors. I am absolutely horrendous with colors because I'm colorblind. I'm red-green colorblind, so it's very hard to get skin tones just from the color picker. So I just normally Google skin tones, choose whatever image, copy and paste it into the program, and then just color pick it from there. I go in, I saturate every single part of the illustration that I need the color in. And yeah, I could be making selections with a magic wand tool and then erasing, but I find it slightly therapeutic to be able to just go in and then it's kind of like a coloring book to me. It just relaxes me. It's not necessarily the most efficient, but if I was doing production work, I wouldn't be doing it like that. But when I'm doing videos like this, I just like to go in and just color different sections, making sure that everything's nice and filled. If there's like anything outside the lines, I have to go back and erase it. And it might not make sense, but it actually relaxes me a lot. It drowns me out from what I'm thinking, and it just allows me to focus on the drawing. At this point, I start just coloring the different sections. I don't normally name my layers, but since I will be making videos for you guys to download and to be able to get, I'm going to need to organize my files a little bit better. At this point, I decided to make her pink, her hair pink. Right now, I have a very ambiguous girl that I tend to draw with Archie, and her name is Venus. And I haven't really decided exactly what way I want to go with her, so that's why I don't want to just like name all the girls that I did, Venus, but something that crosses my mind every single time. At this point, I start coloring Archie. I realize that the two colors of the nose and his body are too similar, so I decided to make it a little bit darker, and I blended in the nose color with the rest of his body. Going into the lips and deciding what accent color I'm going to use for the superheroes. I decided to go with yellow and orange, I believe. And that's mostly because I was watching One Punch Man while I was drawing this. And I love the color scheme of Saitama. Let's see. As you can see, I utilize the layers in a way where I cover the parts where you normally have a lot of color, and then I color everything that would be under, like overlapping those colors underneath. That way you can fill in really big areas without having to worry about, like having to erase the sections after that. So essentially the big areas of color cover the smaller areas, like overlapping parts, so it's easy to just go in and saturate it. It's not that I have like the most precise hands in the world. So yellow and orange. Oh, that's also the reason that I use really bright colors. The color blindness, well, it's annoying with subtleties. The very, very, very small subtleties in color kind of throw you off, so I tend to not do it. I tend to go with either monochromatic looks, or I like to go with super overly bright colors. And it kind of works with my style, so, can't complain. Going into the beanie, adding a little bit of color to it, darker ears, and just making sure that all the colors look good. Add little stripes at the back. I was trying to figure out what color to make the socks, I believe. And meanwhile, I'm just coloring the different shoes and stuff. Start adding little tiny highlight accents, and I think I decided to just go with white. You can't go wrong with white socks. Let's see. This is like commentating a sports game. I have a little bit more found respect for them. Shadows! Okay, so we're going into shadows. Shadows are interesting. I normally make a layer right underneath my line mark, and I make it into like a purple, as you can see, like a bluish purple, and make it a little bit darker, and then just reduce the opacity to about 25, 30, and then set it to multiply. This will give you a little bit more color, like variation, as opposed to just a straight black layer. If you just use black, it tends to dull out your colors, and it tends to just not, it looks washed out. So I tend to not do that. Whatever the good rule of like law that I like to go with is making sure that the shadows are the color of what the most lighting is gonna be. In this case, whenever it's outside, I like to do them a little bit bluish tint because I'm going to be outside in the, in a blue sky. It doesn't make much sense, but if it's like a sunset, I use a orange or like a dark red. And if it's like, winter, I like to use slightly lighter blues, but you get the idea. It gives you a little bit of sense that the shadows are the color of the actual environment. And just kind of go around, set up a light source, and then just start adding a slight indication of shadow to be able to, give it some depth. I gave their nose a little bit of tint, so her face isn't just one color. And then when I start adding colors to the building, I make sure that I identify where the light source would be, and then just color things with really simple flat shading. I'm not really blending any shadows at this point, and essentially I'm just leaving it like that because I like the whole look of a, Saturday morning cartoon. In this case, I made a simple, trace of a background. I make a cityscape, which is literally just boxes, and adding a little bit of a gradient to it gives you a little bit more of a feel for, and just having it as an environmental piece. The two building shapes that I make in the front, I made them and I'm going to blur them so it looks like it's shadows. So it creates even more depth without adding any detail. In this case, I'm also adding the little thought bubble that's going to say boobs. And that's why Archie's jumping into action. I'm also not a big font guy, so I normally just scroll down until I find something that I like. In this case, I like really rounded shapes because I'm trying to make it into a little comic. And highlights! Highlights are the best part of any illustration. If you do not like highlights, I normally leave them toward the end because that's like my little joy. That is my happiness section. I like to just go in and make everything look nice and shiny. I have to make sure that I stop doing it with parts of the body that aren't supposed to have highlights. Like maybe like skin is fine, depending on if you put lotion and stuff. But I have to make sure that I do it organically and it makes sense and not just add them everywhere because I love highlights and I just like adding them everywhere. But let's see. I think at this point I bring in a texture and I'm going to put the texture just on the background and the building layer. That way it breaks it up a little bit more and it gives me a little bit more contrast with the actual clean lines of the characters. In this case, I am blurring the lines from the shadows and the buildings in the front, giving a little bit more motion lines to his hands so it looks like he's eager to get in there. And I add a little heart because he's in love, and I sign it, and I figured at the end just adding a little tiny bit of texture to the lighting would make it even better, but I think that ends the illustration. And as you can see, well, let's pan a little bit. The illustration took about 3 hours to make total, and well, it was really just an illustration that came from, just from my mind. Nothing really, like made me want to do it. It's just something fun that came to my mind. All right, so we're done with the illustration. As you can see, It's a little bit different format. I'm not sure how you guys might feel about it. Please leave a comment with any information of what you feel about this. If you liked it, that'd be awesome. If you don't, let me know and I'll switch back to my other formats that I've done before. But hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Once again, make sure to check out my Patreon if you guys are interested in supporting, what I do. And that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful night, day, whatever time you guys are watching this, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Later. If you guys want to see some more videos, I leave you guys links to the left and to the right with some more cool stuff that you guys might be interested in. Hope you guys have a nice day, and I will catch you guys in the next video.